Episode 126 of the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Welcome back. Sid and Jeremy here to get things rolling. How you feeling today, Sid?
Yeah, so good, dude. And so excited about this conversation that you got to have with our guest today. Like really, really exciting. Really cool.
Yeah, the story that Richmond has, I just need to tell you guys, you have to listen all the way through because if you are like somebody who likes to, cut up episodes or, not get to the end of a podcast episode, this is not one of those ones. He tells this story, his personal story about how a high school girl has completely changed and transformed his life. That is, I think, one of the most inspiring stories of the value of youth ministry and what you and I get to do in the roles that we're in. I get fired up by it. So, Richmond is representing this organization, Compassion, which we all love. And if you haven't heard of Compassion, you've got to check them out. We've got a couple different links in the show notes, including some more details on Richmond's story. I've been a longtime fan. We sponsor kids through Compassion. Sid, I think you guys sponsor kids through Compassion.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, that's a great next step for people.
Yeah, and Jared, not only have we sponsored kids in Compassion, I've been able to go on Compassion trip, and it was fantastic. Like the work that Compassion does is so compelling. We love Compassion. We love the work that they do. And so you should, by the way, look to sponsor a child. It's so worthwhile. It's so important. You got to do it. We love what Compassion does.
Yeah, and then to see the impact again of this student in Richmond's life as he was in the sponsor program, and so it connects the dots so well. So, anyways, bottom line is this is going to be wonderful. You're going to want to check out all those things in the show notes to follow up and learn more about what they're doing. And you, as a volunteer youth worker, I hope that you hear loud and clear that if you can lead your students well, you will honestly lead them to places where they will change the world. And that's a story from today. So really looking forward to hearing from Richmond. Let's jump into the conversation that I got to have with him.
Welcome to the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Youth ministries rise and fall on the volunteers. So we are here to encourage and equip you. Join the conversation as we tackle the practical questions you are asking so you can help the next generation know Jesus.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined today by Richmond, and this is crossing international lines to have this conversation, which we're so grateful for. Richmond, why don't you fill people in on where you're coming to the conversation today?
Greetings from Uganda, warm Uganda. I don't know what it is like in Canada right now, but I know that it is very warm here. And I just want to begin by making some of you jealous. You need to come.
What part of Uganda are you in? Remind everybody for that. That's
right in Kampala City.
Fascinating.
So yeah, it's really beautiful. Times are tough, and it's been a very dark, maybe 19 months for us as a country. But every so often you turn around and see that God put some highlights on the horizon, and things like weather and laughter, children smiles, and it kind of gets you up saying, look, there is hope and it's going to be okay. So yeah, I'm coming to everyone from Kampala, Uganda.
That's so great. And we're going to hear your story in a second, but also I'm sure people are, or at least I've been intrigued to learn a bit about the fact that COVID is worldwide. And so in lots of ways, we've experienced the COVID pandemic, but it's very different these days as we're into the vaccinations and that sort of thing. It sounds like, I know we were talking before we hit record, that in Uganda, it's still ravaging the country, and it's actually probably more intense than it has been in lots of ways. Like, what's happening with COVID?
We're dealing with a second variant of COVID-19. And, our country did okay in 2020. But this particular time around, the variant that we're dealing with is putting down children and youth, which is a very rare situation. So all primary schools have been closed, all secondary schools, universities, everything is shut down. And it's been shut down for a while now. But that's why our country has slid into a very critical place where experts are saying that our economy has been so ravaged by all that's going on, all the shutdowns, lockdowns, and policy decisions that have emerged from this pandemic, that it's affected the private sector, the formal sector, and literally from top to bottom of our country's economy. It's going to take us 15 years for our economy to recover to what it was before Corona hit. And so we are in a place where there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear. Parents, especially in our space, who are used to waking up in the morning and seeing their children off to school, and they know their kids are going to have lunch at school and many of those things at school. Well, now they're having to deal with waking up in the morning with 4, 5, 6 children in the home, and there is no food, there is no job, there is no health care, there is no platform, government response for families like that, which is the majority of the situation in many families. And so, yes, we're in a very, very difficult place. And so I'm hoping that our government is able to figure something out that would bring some hope to people. I mean, we are 46 million people, and most, I would say, are dealing with fear, anxiety, and hunger that's sliding beyond hunger into starvation right now.
It's awful to hear. And I know you're bringing leadership to your country and even other countries in East Africa. So this is something that's obviously extremely personal to you because you're seeing the broad impacts. This is not just in your own home, in your own community, but even beyond the walls of Kampala and so on. And so maybe fill people in just a little bit on your role with New Life Baptist Church. I think you're on staff as the lead pastor, and then the Pastors Discipleship Network that you founded.
Yeah, I'm currently pastoring New Life Baptist Church. That's right in the heart of Kampala City. My heart is to change communities for Christ. And I've seen that happen. And especially in this COVID time when we're hearing a lot of reports of churches losing numbers and losing people. We've set up structures. We've set up kind of a cell group structure, which we call New Life Communities. For all the 45 villages that our church is serving, we have home churches in these places. So, Jeremiah, it's very amazing to see that for us, while all these reports are going around, we've instead seen our church double in size during this pandemic. And that has just been remarkable, just how we've structured it all and empowered the youth and the emerging leaders and just told them, look, we trust you. We've grounded you. Serve. This is the time that you need to show yourself because people need you. People need hope. And so we've let them loose. And it's been incredible. The investment we put in the youth and in the young people is now paying off significantly.
And so you're saying like young people are leading this kind of growth, this kind of how does that work?
Okay, so let me just take a step back and just describe the statistics that we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
So my country, Uganda, is the world's second leading country with the youngest population.
Wow.
Over 70% of people in my country are below the age of 30 years.
Oh.
Think about that. Yeah. And this has come out of long wars. So since 1952 to date, we've had 8 massive civil wars that have literally wiped out fathers, grandfathers, mothers, grandmothers. Literally, I would wrestle, Jeremy, if you asked me to mention one person who has both a father and a grandfather. If you put me on the spot right now and asked me, I wouldn't. Why? Because we're a very young nation right now. And so we are almost at that point where we have to. There is not a choice. We have to. We've got to challenge young people to grow up. We've got to challenge young people to take life seriously. We've got to challenge young people to be responsible for their younger ones. I mean, I led a child-headed home. I began taking care of my 6 siblings when I was only 11 years old. And so that is the kind of situation in my country that I'm making a contribution to see improve.
Let me just ask on that kind of note, because we've got youth workers that are listening, and in some ways, probably a lot of our youth workers would think, oh, we would love to call our teenagers to a higher calling, but they maybe don't have the same life circumstances that bring that as a necessity. So, we're dealing with teenagers that maybe have parents that have means that don't have to take care of their siblings. Do you think you can still call young people to a life of sacrifice and a life of giving themselves and a life of mission, even when they have all these extra comforts that oftentimes people in Canada have?
There is an assumption that we have of young people that they don't want challenge, that they want comfort, they just want to play, they want games, they want something that just makes them giggle and laugh. The truth is, young people want to be challenged. Everyone wants a challenge. Everyone feels most satisfied when there was an impossible task and they've gotten it done. When I was younger, it's not like I had to, I had options out. But then I envisioned what it could look like if I embraced a particular challenge. And my leaders were good at that, saying, hey, Richmond, today it's your turn. Get this done. And I enjoyed it. I'll share with you something about challenge that I found about a lady in New Orleans after the hurricane had come through and literally ravaged the New Orleans area. And this lady shared her story that touched me deeply. She said she'd been in church for 20 years and she'd been faithful, giving, participating. But this particular time, the pastor asked her to find homes and blankets and food for 200 families that had been displaced. Mm-hmm. And she said that she had never prayed more in her life. She'd never read more. She'd never trusted more. She'd never worked more in her life. And she said that those 2 weeks that she had to get that task done, her faith grew in those 2 weeks more than all the 20 years she'd been in church, because it was a challenge presented to her. The pastor says, I trust you to get this done. Mm-hmm. And she accepted. And I think that's what happens when there is a challenge. It causes wrestling. It causes a certain form of, like, we've got to get this done. We've got to bring our best to the front right now in order to attack this and get it done. And I think when young people are challenged to do that, it's amazing what they do. If you tell them, we need this community cleaned up, we're going to help change that school's experience such that the children can come to classes with dignity, man, young people will get that and they will go forward. And later on, I'll share how a young person is actually the one who changed my life. So, young people are open to the challenge. But I think there is an underlying assumption that we have that if we challenge them too much, they're going to think, look, are we back in school now? Are we, what's this? Are we supposed to rest and play and just be goofing around? I think that there is a place for that. But I think if there is an opportunity to challenge a young person, just kind of push that boundary and see how the young person is receiving that challenge. And people are going to be incredibly amazed at what is in young people.
Can you, so I want to hear a little bit more. How have you challenged young people in this season to see some of this kind of growth? What's been the specific things that you've brought to young people and said, hey, we need you to step up in this kind of way?
Okay, so there's 2 things that happened once this COVID hit. So lots and lots of people in my community lost jobs. They were not allowed to be on the street. Even those that are on the street selling petty things and selling corn and selling breakfast bites and selling anything that they could sell, like corn on the road. All those were asked, you cannot be on the road. We can't have trade happening. And then, so think about it. In Uganda, our government was not providing food to the people. Mm-hmm. And it's telling the people, you can't go to work. So what are people to do? How are people going to eat? That's like a death sentence. And so I challenged the church and I said, anyone here who is able to earn, who has continued to earn more than $100 a month, as you buy corn and beans for your home, do the same for another family and bring that portion to church. And I said to young people, it is your job now to go through the community, identify those homes that need this the most. And then you're responsible for taking that food there. And hey, don't be silly. You've got to keep yourself safe. So keep that mask on, keep that sanitizer on you, make sure that you're in this situation. And so we rolled it out into the hands of the young people. And it's crazy, Jeremy, that some of these young people went beyond just what our local church members were doing. They began going to shops, to supermarkets, and to other places saying, look, we need food. We need food. This was an effort led by young people. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that young people did was just, it almost brought tears to my eyes. They realized that some families, even when you gave them a bag of food, it was going to last them just 5 days and it would be over. And these kids would slide back into starvation. And so they came up with something that was incredible, something that we called temporary adoption, where families that had children that were not going to make it, if they didn't move into a new home that had extra food, those families were approached by the church saying, we have this protection plan where your children will be safe. But there are families within the church that have the capacity to take in 1 or 2 more children. And for a month or 2 until this lockdown is lifted. And so that's what happened. The young people began literally coordinating this entire network of children, making sure that parents are updated on how their children are doing, making sure that if a parent wanted to see the child, that the parent was able to see the child. And so this is all young people doing this. And so when you trust them, it's incredible what they bring to the surface if you call it out.
It's unbelievable and so encouraging and so challenging, I think, for all of us to hear, because I mean, that's the dream, I think, for all of us, but it requires maybe renewed imagination for those of us in Canada and some of the countries that are listening to imagine being able to challenge our students to that kind of level where they would be acknowledged by the government.
Jeremy,
fascinating.
I do think that it starts slowly, but I think the shift in the mindset does not start with the youth. I think it starts with the youth leader. That's where it all starts. Like, John Maxwell has this very, very powerful quote that just, I wake up to that quote almost every day. The idea that everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything. That when the leader gets it, when the leader moves one step closer to a new revelation of what the church experience for the young person could look like, that illumination in the leader's mind, just give it time, it transfers into the young people. And so the leader is one who calls it out, but the leader cannot call out what they don't see. And so I think that Jeremy, even this podcast alone is a powerful means of exposing what's possible. Mm-hmm. And I think having me on and just sharing our story, like I said, the context is different. And what we do here may not necessarily translate, but in some way the principles translate. And so I believe that once the youth worker sits down and says, what potential is under my care right now? All these young people, what are we able to do to change the world for Christ? And slowly by slowly, as they investigate the different battles that the global church is dealing with and how they're dealing with it, they begin to open their eyes to possibilities that they were initially not open to.
It's amazing. Why don't you fill people in a bit on your story? Because I know you kind of dropped that hint that there was a teenager that changed your life a number of years ago. And what was that story? How did this all come together?
Well, thank you so much. So when I was 8 years old, my father was murdered. And he was murdered in the presence of my mother. And so on the same day, it appeared like I had lost both my parents. My father physically, he was gone. But my mother emotionally and psychologically, she was not the same. My mother was the kind of woman you called when you're having a bad day. She could talk your ear off. But after my father died, she just became so subdued and so quiet. We couldn't get a word out of her. I just kept remembering in my mind the cry when we were laying my father to rest. She kept saying, Stephen, why have you left me? And she said it probably 1,000 times. And there we were, having joined the millions of orphans in our region who don't have fathers. And so coming from a country where all education is private, a country where there is no government support for people such as my mother. My mother was stuck at the age of 25 with 6 children now. And she had no education, no training, no skills. But her health was going bad and deteriorating significantly, not just high blood pressure, but she had other issues as well. And so by the time I was 8 and a half, I had dropped out of school. And what began as visits to the street became a lifestyle. I could wake up in the morning. I used to love walking with my sister Doreen, who was 6 at the time. And we could go to the east and to the west and go to markets and try to pick anything that drops from any type of bananas or sugarcane or food that is dropping from lorries, and as it's being ferried into shops or ferried into wherever they sell at wholesale, and we could pick whatever drops and we could eat that. But for me, by the time I was 10 years old, Jeremy, I had already suffered from malaria over 10 times. I came to near-death situations so many times that to this day I ask, why did I survive? How did I survive? And so that's why I give myself 100% to whatever I feel God is calling me to do, because I'm just so indebted. And so, but by the time I was 11, my mother had approached Compassion International and shared our story. And they said they would work hard to find me a sponsor. And at the age of 11, Jeremy, my life changed. I was introduced to my sponsor, who was a 15-year-old girl called Heather. And Heather had taken a babysitting job. And from that income, this 15-year-old was able to sponsor me. And her sponsorship allowed me to have food every day, allowed me to have access to mosquito nets and healthcare, allowed me the opportunity to go back to school. I really wanted to go back to school. And then it allowed me to be a child again, because of this project where I was, this compassion project. There were things that kids in my community love and long for. But just because of the setup and the situation, they just can't have access to things such as swings, merry-go-rounds, crayons to color, places to play. It's incredible what justice looks like when you look at a child who is desiring to play and they can't play. And so I got access to to being a child again at the age of 11. And so slowly my heart began to warm up to the gospel that was shared to us at the Compassion Project. Now, you might know this already, Jeremy, but by the time a child joins Compassion International, and between that time and to the time the child graduates at the age of 22, they would have heard the gospel over 1,500 times. And for me, I joined the project, and I came from a non-Christian background, so I didn't care whenever they were teaching the Bible, and I was just like, I can't wait to play, and I just wanted to play. But by the time I was 14 years old, Pastor Peter shared from Genesis 39 about this boy Joseph, who had gone through all this difficulty, and yet God had a good plan for him. And those words touched me. And that day, Jeremy, I gave my life to the Lord. And I just felt, wow, my life is different. And I did not know that I was going to be an open door to reaching my family for the Lord. By the time I was 16, Jeremy, all 5 of my siblings had made a decision to follow the Lord. And when I was 19, my mother, she invited herself to this Compassion Project. And on this particular day, it was a Sunday. And so Pastor Peter was preaching. And I can never forget this. My mother walks forward and she trusts the Lord with her life. As I speak now, my entire family is not just with its faith in the Lord, but we are all involved in ministry somehow. I'm a pastor. 2 of my brothers are also involved in ministry. My other siblings are also involved in ministry at different levels. But we are all committed to the Lord right now. And this is what I wrote to Heather, who was a 15-year-old at the time. Right now, Heather is about 48 years old. And I wrote to her and I said, Heather, listen, I I cannot thank you enough for what you did for me. I cannot thank you enough. But the fact that I was able to go to school and have food and dress up and not wear shorts with holes and be in this place of indignity is great, and thank you. But this is one thing I really thank you for, that Christ came into our home, and that changed our lives, not just now, but for all eternity. And Jeremy, I'm a different man today. Growing up in our African context, we're told in one way how to treat women, who women are, and whether we view them as property or that which you paid bride price for and all of that. But I'm not that man, because Christ has changed my heart. If I didn't have, I would probably be free, maybe educated. I'm an accountant, by the way. She'd sponsored me all through to finishing my degree, and I became an accountant. And I could be a man freed from poverty, but not freed from some of the dark side of our culture. And when I embraced biblical culture, right now, I try to love my wife. And again, I skipped through that, but I'm married now. But I try to love my wife in such a way that models biblical culture in my context. And many people who are especially going to my church and in my community, they are changing their view of women, their view of girls. Most people do not view girls as those that they pay to go to school. And why would you educate a girl? And that might seem a very foreign question in Canada, but in here, it's a very strong question. And she's going to get married, she's going to stay home and take care of kids. Give me a reason why you're educating girls. And that mindset is now under attack because we are modeling different. We're modeling dignity for women. I'm modeling love for my wife in a way that I'm reading in the scriptures. So the Bible has not just saved me for heaven, but I think the transformation that's happened in my life is making waves and shifting culture, especially the dark side of our culture today. And so I proceeded through that. So at the age of 14, I make a decision to follow Christ. By 16, my siblings now know the Lord. At 19, I see my mother make a decision to follow Christ. And Jeremy, at the age of 22, I got a grand invitation by the senior pastor of the church that hosted the Compassion Project saying, Richmond, we've observed you and you love the word and you love people. Would you care to come on as my associate pastor? And Jeremy, I greeted that with so much joy. And I said, I can't believe that I am now a pastor at the very church that I joined as a child without faith. And with all the struggles of poverty on my shoulders, the voice of poverty saying, you are nothing, you are ugly, nobody wants you, nobody is involved, nobody wants to know your name. And now I get a chance to push back those lies among thousands of children in my community. And so a few years later, the senior pastor decided to move on to become the general secretary of the Baptist Union of Uganda. And Pastor Peter was his name. And he basically encouraged the elders to consider me for senior pastor. And just a few years ago, I was asked if I was willing to become the senior pastor, to which I said yes. And so, Jeremy, today I am the senior pastor of, again, the church that I joined without faith as a little boy. And so that's really my story that could be summarized in the fact that one 15-year-old did one act that changed my life, and now is changing my country and my continent.
What a gift your story is, and your willingness to share it with so many people. And so, Richmond, I know this has been inspiring for all of us to hear, those of us that are working with teenagers, that the capabilities of these students that we're working with is just astronomical if we'd be willing to call it out from them. I'm wondering if, as we come to a close here, if you'd be willing to just pray for these youth workers that are listening and pray for the teenagers that they represent, that we might be able to see what God has for the teenagers in our midst, that we could have eyes to see what God is planning for them, and that we could play our part in calling them out to that greater kingdom work, that it might make an impact, perhaps as large as what you've just explained to us through a couple of these instances here today. I think it'd be such a gift. And so if you'd be able to, would you be able to close our time today by praying for us?
Absolutely, Jeremy. And maybe before I pray, I'd like to introduce myself just a little bit more by saying I'm now not only pastoring the church that I joined as a child, but I've been trained with a master's degree in theology. And so I'm in the top 1% of pastors in my country with an education. And so I'm president today and founder of Pastors Discipleship Network, a ministry that's training and equipping over 6,000 pastors in 5 East African countries. And I'm so delighted that what I am seeing is that we believe as the African church that the West has been pouring into us and must continue to strategically do that, because we are now praying and realizing that the center of gravity of the Christian faith is shifting a little bit into the global South. And the more you pour and the more you pray and the more you invest in our space, I think the greater kingdom impact that we'll see once Africa has begun to send missionaries back to you, or to pray for you more, or to share our stories and our battles and our perseverance and how God is working with us. And so I want to ask everyone who is listening to hear me representing the East African Church, the 5 countries that we are working in, as I pray for you.
Well, and as you say that, it reminds me that there's a couple of great things here. I think we often have obviously means to be helpful when it comes to like the means, like the financial end of things, and yet as you share some of these stories, there's a richness, theologically and spiritually, to the work that you're doing, that you have people. And I know, part of your story is you spent time studying in, was it Chicago?
Yes, Chicago.
Yeah. So you understand a little. Chicago's not Canada, but it's close. They're close. It gets cold there too. But you would know the spiritual depth that you have experienced in your country from what requires dependency on God, and to be able to export that and send those types of people to bring that type of dependency and expectation on who God is. That's something that we desperately need in our country, that we have a deficit of spiritual depth in so many places. We've got spiritual giants certainly in our midst, but because of the means that we have, oftentimes in our culture, there's not the same experience, I guess, of spiritual depth. And so to learn from our Christian brothers and sisters in East Africa would be just such an absolute gift at times. So I love that so much. And then obviously we're going to connect in the show notes all sorts of ways that people can connect with Compassion and the work that Compassion continues to do to this day. Obviously, we'll link your ministries, because it's exciting to hear some of the work. And I know this is just a quick snapshot, so maybe we'll try and link a few other places that people can learn more about what you're doing, because they'll certainly want to do that. And then we'll have to plan to have you back to unpack a little bit more of what training 6,000 pastors is doing, because that's outrageous in and of itself. What a gift that must be. So yeah, thank you so much, Richmond, for all of that.
Well, Jeremy, I'll just pray right now, just giving thanks. Heavenly Father, in my mind, there is a picture that every youth worker is touching the future leader, a future influencer, a future father, a future mother, a future advocate, a future social worker, a future shaper of culture, of thought. And so my mind goes to Proverbs 13, verses 22, that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children, but not just an inheritance in terms of the resource, but what we're seeing here is youth workers are actually handing over an inheritance to the nation, an inheritance of godly men and godly women, an inheritance of a generation that is not burdened by entitlement, that is not consumed by wanting everything to be about them, but a generation that's able to move away from the center and ask the Lord to take his rightful place, and willing to say, it's not about me. I want to give life for someone else, for something bigger than myself. And so, Father, I pray for every youth worker today, every volunteer, everyone who's given time, that as they touch the inheritance, that they are giving to their nation, that, Lord, you will bless them, that, Lord, you will be with them, that you will give grace, increase challenge, and give strength to anyone who is feeling weak or feeling weary. I thank you so much for the little youth who sponsored me, who made a difference in my life, and the opportunity that I now have to pass the baton on to the next generation. Lord, you work in amazing ways. May you continue to work. And this we pray in the matchless name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Well, there you guys have it. You're going to want, obviously, to go to the links in the show notes to find a little bit more about Richmond's story, to find out ways that you can partner with Compassion through your ministry with teenagers. And so be sure to do that. And then also we threw a couple of the links in the show notes to our On the Road tour. I know it's coming right around the corner, so depending on when you listen to this, we might have already driven by your town if you live in Canada. And we're doing a lot of driving in a week here, Sid. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. I think we're going to, you and I are going to become even better friends from driving across the country.
Either better or worse friends, because we're driving across the country. We're sleeping in the same hotel room. It's going to be fantastic. I'm so excited about it, bro. And we're going to Instagram the whole thing, by the way. So we're going to be like live online. People get to follow it. But hey, what would be the best is if you're a volunteer youth worker, if you could get your point leader in the room with us, I promise you, we're going to make your experience as a volunteer in that ministry better and even more effective. That's the prayer. And so we're targeting point leaders or culture shapers in the youth ministry, and we want to equip and encourage and renew vision and passion for what it is we're called to do in this incredibly complex season that we're in. So we're really excited to be with you. We love all of our partners, especially Alpha's coming with us, Jer, going to talk a lot about the research they did with Barna on evangelism in our country with Gen Zs, and we think it's so important to start really turning the corner again in evangelism so we can be more effective in passing faith on to the next generation. Really excited about the tour.
And the other sponsor of the tour, also sponsor the podcast, making youth ministry, youth worker community really happen, is Trinity Western University. They are
as if we
beautiful people.
Oh, my word. I love Trinity Western University so much. I love how they're thinking about how to develop kingdom leaders in this very complex society and environment we're in. And kingdom leaders who are not just seeing like the vocational space as the space for kingdom work, but all space, like all vocational space. By that, what I mean is like whether you are in like a ministry context, a ministry specific context, or a context that you wouldn't consider historically a ministry specific space, knowing that God's called you to that, you need to steward that and do the good kingdom work that God has for you there. And I think they're doing such a great job. Their leadership development is fantastic. If you have a student looking for a post-secondary education, Trinity Western is great, not simply because of the education, but also because of the community, the leadership development and spiritual formation that happens so intentionally within their dorms and the community of students in that space. So really excited about what Trinity does, and would encourage you to check out their website and talk to people there. That's going to be very helpful for you.
Absolutely. And then we'll see you back here next week for another episode of the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast.